Hello and welcome to today's session where we are going to talk about how to get started with StateRAMP and best serve your government partners and customers. Thank you for joining us. You're going to notice that due to the volume of participants, your microphone is muted. However, we do invite you and encourage you to type any questions you may have in the chat feature, and we will do our best to get back to you, if not today, in the future. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll go ahead and begin. My name is Leah McGrath, and I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as Executive Director of StateRAMP. I'm joined today by Noah Brown, our PMO Director, and Jordan Hickam, who oversees our membership engagement team. We are going to talk about StateRAMP, what it is, and really jump pretty quickly into the details of the different security assessments and kind of progression that we have and how that works. So starting off, if you're new to StateRAMP, welcome. StateRAMP is a nonprofit membership organization, and we have really brought together leaders in both the public and private sectors to drive toward best practices in cybersecurity to help improve and standardize supplier risk management for our government members and partners, and to facilitate ongoing information sharing that we know is so critical to cybersecurity and continuous improvement. StateRAMP stands for something. We have this question all the time. RAMP stands for Risk Authorization Management Program. And it's really a shared service serving kind of as an extension of our government members and participating governments to provide assessment of the cloud products that are being considered or already in use by the public sector. Having memberships with both our public sector and private sector leaders allows everyone to come together to recognize a common set, a standardized set of criteria. And as you're going to see, as Noah shares with us what that process looks like, our framework is based on NIST 853 specifically. Our new StateRAMP Security Snapshot program that we'll be talking about is something that's been very exciting for us this year as we have launched and really helps bring innovation faster to government, helping businesses of all size succeed with cybersecurity and really open the doors for improved visibility and cyber posture sooner in that process. For providers, we're really aiming to help make compliance simpler so that you have the ability to validate your cyber posture once, to report into one centralized program management office and team in order to serve your many customers. As we drive towards standardization and best practices in cybersecurity, we're really also driving towards standardization in how StateRAMP is leveraged, and believe that that's how we're going to help all of our members really kind of gain the best insights out of the process. So we're going to jump right into what is that process. So we have, as a nonprofit, as I'm sure you're aware, we've got memberships. We're going to talk later about how to join, but as a member, you have the ability to participate on a number of different committees, and it's those governance committees, whether it's our steering committee, board, standards and technical committee, or one of the many, many other committees that we have. It's those committees who really help guide the StateRAMP process and adopt the policies that define our minimum standards and requirements. You can find more information about that on the website. On this page we're showing here to you. But at this point, I really want to invite Noah Brown to talk a little bit about what does the security process look like and how do you begin?
Thanks, Leah. So the steps for StateRAMP security progression. We have the new StateRAMP Security Snapshot program. You have StateRAMP Ready and StateRAMP Authorized. Please keep in mind that you don't have to go through the Security Snapshot or StateRAMP Ready in order to become StateRAMP Authorized. The idea behind this program and these process steps are to allow a provider to come in and progress through, and really allows them, the Security Snapshot program gives them an entry point into the program to help them understand where they're at in relation to the minimum mandate requirements, as well as provide guidance for them to be successful in the program. And I'll be going into detail into each one of these in the following slides. So the Progressing Security Snapshot Program, the Security Snapshot, consider it to be like a miniature gap analysis. So that that progressing program allows you to have an initial and then quarterly security snapshots to update your score as your security score improves. It also includes monthly consultative calls with the StateRAMP PMO. So our team can actually hop on a call with you as the service provider and help you understand what is your highest ROI or your most critical controls to implement in relation to the StateRAMP minimum mandates. And then we also have the ability to share those updated scores and progress information with government customers for the not only the increased visibility, but to give the give your government customers an idea of how you're progressing along the program, how you're improving the security of your product, and helps them feel at ease with the citizens' data being placed within those solutions.
Yeah, and Noah, it's a huge benefit for providers because it allows them to gain insight into their product cyber posture, how to improve it efficiently, and simplify centralized reporting to satisfy government requirements. And it does come at a cost, so it is a monthly fee, and we're starting at $1,000. But if you're smaller, when it comes to revenue, we can have that discussion to lower the tiers. We made it a level playing field. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely feel free to reach out to our team at info@stateramp.org, and we'd be more than happy to accommodate.
Absolutely. And when we think about the impact of the progressing program for government, what that does mean, just for clarification too, is those progress notes can be shared with government InfoSec teams. Now, all of that provisioning of sharing of documentation or notes happens by the provider. So this is the provider's information, and they're the ones who provision access. So that's another way for providers to be able to help serve their government customers in a secure way, right? You're reporting one time, and as you have more government customers interested, you're able to provision that access accordingly and in a really safe and secure way. For government, what this means is it's like comparing apples to apples. I've heard some call this, it's like your credit score, right? It's at the end of the snapshot, you've got a score that says this is your cyber maturity relative to being able to meet the most minimum critical controls of NIST 853. So for governments who are relying on security assessments or thinking about wanting to vet the products that they are really depending on to deliver services, this is a nice way to be able to do that more easily, quickly, so that then governments have the bandwidth to manage the risk and to review that. And you can see more information on our website, but maybe Noah, what is the snapshot in some more detail?
Sure. So the security snapshot, like I said earlier, consider it to be a miniature gap assessment. So the idea is we collect artifacts and verify those artifacts against the requirements based on the StateRAMP minimum mandates. The beauty of it for the service provider is that rather than varying questionnaires and requirements state by state, you actually have a published score letter that you are able to take to the state to let them know where you're at in the security maturity of your system. And for the states, they have the comfort in knowing that it's gone are the days of self-attestation for security. So we're getting to now the point where the PMO is able to conduct that verification and validation of that compliance and those artifacts on behalf of the state. Again, it is the most critical controls or the minimum mandates we have for the StateRAMP program or what we are auditing those artifacts against. It is quick, so we're able to deliver it within 3 weeks of that completing that request. We are able to share it with government customers. Again, like Leah was saying, this is totally owned by the service provider. In the Progressing Snapshot program, the beauty of it is we're involved with you and talking to you on a monthly basis as well. So as states have questions about your program or your product, we're able to have those conversations with you and the state on your behalf as well. And you can request the Snapshot program at stateramp.org.
One of the things I was thinking as you were talking, Noah, is a question that I've heard, which is how do you see other states and local governments leveraging the snapshot? And I can tell you, we've heard it in a couple of ways. One, we've seen some governments start requiring or recommending a snapshot at point of solicitation. We've also been working with some participating governments who maybe they already have an assessment process in place for their current vendors, and they're starting to really think about how to shift to or leverage the snapshot, again, to really extend the bandwidth of their team by shifting that assessment to StateRAMP and relying on that shared service. They can shift their resources instead of doing the assessment to really managing that process. So those are the two ways we're really seeing our participating governments embrace the Snapshot program. Tell us about StateRAMP Ready.
Right. So next on the list is StateRAMP Ready. So this means your product meets most minimum critical controls for NIST 853. So different from Snapshot, this is demonstrated by a 3PAO audit. And then that audit report and documentation is verified and validated by the StateRAMP PMO. Once a provider reaches the StateRAMP Ready state, they enter into monthly continuous monitoring that's turned into us at the PMO so we can relay that information to states. We have an annual 3PAO audit to maintain your ready status. And then we also have a FastTrack to StateRAMP Ready process for those providers who have a FedRAMP Ready status. For StateRAMP Ready, you are not required to have a government sponsor. So going through the StateRAMP Ready process, once you've completed that audit and it's come through the PMO, as long as there are no glaring findings, you'll be able to be awarded a StateRAMP Ready.
Yeah, and we also have a tiered structure for this as well. So for providers meeting the StateRAMP Ready status, it gives you the confidence in meeting the minimum critical controls and satisfies the requirements for the government customers that you may have to indicate that you have made it through StateRAMP certification and continue the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the great things how the progressing snapshot fits so well with StateRAMP Ready is those criteria, the requirements, the minimum requirements are really similar. So when you're thinking about that snapshot, the criteria that is being evaluated is really kind of overlaps with the criteria for becoming StateRAMP Ready. And so as you're working through that progressing snapshot program, you're going to be able to really understand where are you relative to being able to be ready, if that makes sense. And that additional layer for StateRAMP Ready and that certification is that independent audit and the verification and validation by our PMO to say, yes, you have demonstrated full compliance with the subset, the most minimum critical controls of NIST 853. And there are a lot of the same controls you might think of from a best practices standpoint, multi-factor authentication, you've got your boundary in place and so forth. But you can see all of those requirements on our website as well. For government, what we're hearing and seeing from our government partners is really leveraging Ready to say, hey, if you're not StateRAMP Ready yet, we're starting to see language that requires awarded vendors. So if there's an RFP out there, you might see language that requires an awarded vendor to have that product become StateRAMP Ready within maybe 12 months of contract award. And then authorized, which we'll talk about within another period of time, maybe 24 months. So you can see what we've really worked on with our participating governments and our participating provider members is creating a runway so that we're constantly seeing maturity in the marketplace towards cybersecurity, best practices, and increased visibility and information sharing at that provider level. So for governments, one of the benefits of StateRAMP Ready is that ease of contract administration. So Noah, you mentioned this earlier, the idea of self-attestation, right? So if you are a participating government or just a government agency interested in StateRAMP, if you're thinking about how do you manage and know that a provider meets your requirements, not just today, but throughout that contract administration and duration, StateRAMP Ready, through its monthly continuous reporting, is going to give you the confidence that they've met the most minimum critical controls and they continue to do so. So it's that ease of contract administration. We also have escalation notifications built into our process. So last year, about a year ago this time, our Standards and Technical Committee adopted a continuous monitoring escalation guide that really articulates and defines different activities that would trigger a proactive notification out to a participating government to log in and see, hey, what's going on? And it's not meant in any way to be a penalty or negative. It's really intended to be a mechanism for improvement in information sharing. So if there's a change in ownership, or maybe there's a supplier risk, or perhaps a vulnerability that's been open too long, Those are the types of events that would trigger a proactive notification out to that participating government to be able to log in and see what's going on so they can take action if needed. And on to Authorized, which is our highest level of certification.
So to become StateRAMP authorized, you have to meet all the controls for the impact level at which you're being assessed. So once again, audit and verified, the audit is completed by a 3PAO. And again, those results as well as the artifacts are provided to the StateRAMP PMO for review. The authorization is then completed by a government sponsor or the approvals committee. So if you are unable to find a sponsor, we do have the StateRAMP approvals committee, which can award you with an authorization. Again, monthly continuous monitoring. You do have a requirement for an annual 3PAO audit. And again, for those providers who are FedRAMP authorized, we do have a fast track option to StateRAMP authorization, and that includes both JAB and agency authorizations.
Yes, and as Noah mentioned, providers that have reached StateRAMP authorized, they've met all of the critical controls as well as the full StateRAMP security best practices. And this can satisfy the data compliance needed for government customers throughout the life of their contract so they can continue doing business. Then that continuous monitoring comes into play. And again, the cost for that review for our project management office is $7,500. But again, if you are smaller when it comes to revenue, we can have that discussion to have that tiered for you as well.
Similar to some of the benefits we've talked about, but here with that full set of controls by impact level, confidence is really the difference here for government. You can have trust in the solution that it has met those requirements by impact level, meaning low, moderate, and high, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And full visibility with the same escalation notifications. We do have a question that's relevant here, and Noah, I'm going to ask you to speak to it. And it's, how do government customers request or receive information on CSP authorization packages? Do they go directly to the CSP? If not, how is the CSP made aware when a government client is reviewing the authorization package?
Absolutely. So if a government is requesting access to a provider security package, that access is coordinated through the PMO. So we don't actually grant any form of access to anyone outside of the service provider without the service provider's approval. So that'll actually be in the shape of a request form that will come through to the provider that they will then have to approve. And along with that, you'll actually be able to select what types of information to be shared. So it's totally under the control of the service provider. We don't provision access or provide any of the information to anyone without their approval.
If a government customer did go to a CSP directly to request that access, would their best course of action be to contact the PMO and their contact there?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, if you're a government that wants to have access to a service provider's documentation, reaching out to the PMO, we likely are in regular contact with the service provider security team, and then once that access is provisioned, we kind of have the luxury of being able to help both the government and the providers work through the process and what's happening, because we've seen the product, we see its monthly continuous monitoring. So not only once you get that access provisioned, we can also help the state understand what they're seeing in there, as well as how that provider has been working through the process and kind of what is normal monthly operations for that product.
Awesome. Anything else to add on this slide? Thank you for going through that. We've mentioned impact levels a few times. There are a couple of things here probably to note. And no, I imagine this discussion starts right at the progressing snapshot stage.
It does. So the impact levels, we have low, moderate, and high. So really when you're coming into the program for Snapshot, for Ready, for Authorized, really it all comes down to what types of data are in your system. So for low systems, we're talking metadata or likely publicly available information. For moderate systems, consider PII, PHI, protected information. And then for high systems, those that are coming through really from FedRAMP, high impact level, authorized already over to the FastTrack process. So part of how this impact level, it's really going to carry you through the entire program. So based on the data that you're operating with, that's going to define how many controls you're going to have to meet according to the impact level. And then going through, we have a data classification tool to help you with that. Additionally, if you have questions about it, you can always reach out to the PMO team. And with our progressing snapshot program, this is a conversation that after your initial snapshot, we'd be more than happy to walk through your data types, your boundary on those monthly calls, and help you understand likely what impact level your system would be coming through at if it's something that you have questions on.
This next slide is a little bit of a summary of the continuous monitoring that we've talked about. So once a provider achieves that StateRAMP ready or authorized verified status, we'll call those our verified statuses, there are continuous monitoring requirements. And here you can also see, if you go to that templates and resources page, you can actually view the continuous monitoring policies and escalation guide that we've talked about. So if you, we do publish on our authorized or on our website at stateramp.org, you can see our authorized product list. On this page, if you scroll down, you'll also see our progressing list. So we show on our authorized product list all of those products that have achieved a StateRAMP ready or verified status of ready or authorized as we've walked through. So you can, these are the products that have gone through that full process. If you scroll down, you'll see our progressing list. And on that, we actually show those who are maybe engaged with a 3PAO, they're actively working, so actively working on their on a ready audit or an authorized audit with a 3PAO. You'll see those who are in process or maybe who have pending, meaning they've already submitted their security package to the PMO. One of the things that will be coming soon, we've been working with our steering committee and our standards and technical committee on, is also listing in some form those who are enrolled in the progressing snapshot program. So more details will be coming on that. But as you look at this page, if you want to see who's engaged, you can see who's verified and who's almost ready to be verified. And then we'll probably be adding here soon in some way those who are enrolled in the progressing snapshot program. So invite you to check that out. Coming into some of our commonly asked questions. So, and I see some questions in the chat that I think this will answer as we talk about how does StateRAMP compare to FedRAMP and how does our StateRAMP fast track work? So answering a couple questions in the chat for you. StateRAMP is that process, especially the verified process for StateRAMP ready and authorized, is modeled in part after the FedRAMP process. What we found during our steering committee days in 2020 is that when we were looking at this process, FedRAMP is really designed to serve federal agencies, but there were some limitations that made it difficult for states and local governments to really leverage it. Mainly that in order to be FedRAMP authorized, those products have to have a minimum contract with a federal agency, but also that FedRAMP, because it's designed to serve federal, doesn't share that information outside of federal agencies. And so for states and local governments who are looking for that communication, the continuous monitoring, information sharing, StateRAMP really helped solve that, that gap, fill that gap. So there are some similarities between the programs though. Both are based on NIST 853, that those best practices in cloud security, Rev 4. We're going to be talking about Rev 5. That is that we've got announcements coming there here very soon. But currently, both programs are based on NIST 853 Rev 4. Both require for those verified statuses an independent audit by a third-party assessing organization. And StateRAMP recognizes the same 3PAOs who serve FedRAMP. So if you're a FedRAMP 3PAO, you can be a StateRAMP 3PAO. Both require monthly continuous monitoring for verified statuses, have impact levels of low, moderate, and high, meaning those subsets of controls that are based on impact levels Noah described. We both recognize verified statuses of ready and authorized. And here's where it starts to differ. So where our program is really designed to best serve those in state and local government and the providers who serve them. So our program is available to any provider, regardless of contract. Documentation can be provisioned to any customer by the providers. Again, that's up to our provider community. We have a centralized program management office who manages all of the reviews. So whereas in the FedRAMP process, if you're familiar with FedRAMP, that has different agency, maybe agency authorizations or JAB authorizations, as someone mentioned in our chat. We have a centralized PMO that NOAA leads. And that PMO team is the one who reviews all the security packages, which really ensures consistency in the application of standards across the board. We do have a fast track option for products who have a federal status with FedRAMP. We have a progressing snapshot program, as you heard. So what we didn't talk about when we were describing the progressing snapshot is how that came to be. And really how that came to be is we heard from several government members and provider members who said, hey, we need a way to start. And this progressing snapshot, as NOAA described really well, is like a mini audit and gap analysis, gives every provider, regardless of size, a place to begin, and gives every government the ability to have visibility into where that provider is today with that product, cyber maturity. And then, of course, the key difference is we're a nonprofit. So we are mission driven and really about improving the cyber posture for our public agencies and those who serve them. So one of the questions we received was around the FastTrack program. And so Noah, I'll ask you to describe the FastTrack program. And while you're doing, if you could answer this question. To use the FastTrack, is the CSP required to have a Joint Authorizing Board, JAB authorization, or is an agency authorization acceptable?
Sure. So to put the question first, agency or JAB authorization, either one of those is able to come through the FastTrack process. So StateRAMP FastTrack, you don't have to redo your audit. You're able to reuse your FedRAMP documentation. Realistically, what we're trying to do is, help providers, expand the marketplace and have new solutions available to state government, while also giving states the ability to see the status of those systems and their continuous monitoring. So for the FastTrack process, the same documentation, the same artifacts, the same conmon that you had gone through for your FedRAMP audit, that documentation is turned over to the StateRAMP PMO, so we can go through and conduct our review. And then once we've completed it, if there aren't any issues, that goes forward to either your sponsoring state or to the approvals committee. Once that's completed on a monthly basis, same as with your FedRAMP program, you move into continuous monitoring. So we do accept the same POAM requirements that you're providing to FedRAMP. It would just be uploading that same information to the StateRAMP portal so we can review it on a monthly basis. I also encourage providers who, if you have, I know there's been a backlog with significant change requests, deviation requests, false positives, those types of things on the FedRAMP side. If you're running into delays and those are waiting and they're sitting at pending for 30, 60, 90 days, you can always provide that information to us on our side, so we can at least make a determination on them and mark them, so you don't at least have to worry about whether those are still pending on the StateRAMP side as well. So we try to take the work you've done for federal and bring it over to the StateRAMP program and make it as painless as possible for you.
Absolutely. And the big one here, to kind of sum it up, is regardless of your, whether it was a JAB or agency authorization issued by FedRAMP, you don't have to recomplete the audit or the paperwork, right? And so we're really trying to drive to be more about intent and purpose. And so if you've done that work, we're going to take it and we're going to leverage it so you don't have to redo that work. And I think that's the good news here. Next question is around, could you explain the difference between TaxRAMP and StateRAMP? I'm going to give you a high-level answer to that. We're going to invite you to tune in to a StateRAMP TaxRAMP webinar on June 28th. If it's not up yet, it will be later today or tomorrow, the registration information, so you can register to attend that webinar. But I'll be joined by Matt Kelly, who is the Deputy Director or Deputy CISO, pardon me, with DIR in Texas. So a little bit of background on TaxRAMP and StateRAMP, and I could probably throw in ASRAMP if you're familiar with Arizona's program. StateRAMP was founded in 2020 and launched in 2021. But prior to our launch, there were states starting to develop their own programs because they needed it, right? And so part of what we're doing with StateRAMP is bringing all of those programs together through common standards so that you can, with StateRAMP and a StateRAMP authorization, satisfy all of those requirements. And we're continuing to implement with different participating states to more fully integrate. And so really what I think you'll see is, even if there are states out there who certainly will still need their own compliance teams to manage that risk, I think you're going to see more and more states, as we've seen already, starting to shift that assessment over to StateRAMP and really rely on that. So that is the benefit, right, of coming through the StateRAMP process, is you can use that to satisfy TaxRAMP, to satisfy ASRAMP, and all of the other state requirements. If you're working in a state or a local government who's not yet announced that they're working with StateRAMP, we have an announcement coming in about a month from now of about several other states, I'll just say, who are going to announce participation with StateRAMP. But if you're working with a state and you don't know if they're recognizing StateRAMP or a local government, I'd encourage you to ask or send them our way, and we'd be happy to kind of get them on board to work with you. So in short, in terms of the TaxRAMP program, it was started a little bit before StateRAMP, as was ASRAMP. And so TaxRAMP is out there as a program, and if you aren't familiar with it, there was a law that passed, I think it was in June of 2021, and requires providers who serve Texas to achieve a TaxRAMP or StateRAMP certification. I'll explain the StateRAMP there. So TaxRAMP is similar in that there are similar requirements, right? And so there are some differences, but StateRAMP's Progressing Security Snapshot will meet TaxRAMP provisional requirements. StateRAMP Ready and Authorized are going to meet some of those requirements for TaxRAMP certifications. If you're reading documentation on Texas's website that says level 1, that correlates to our low impact level. If you see level 2 on Texas's website, that correlates with our moderate impact level. So those are just some of kind of the high level takeaways. But if you attend this webinar, we've been, like I said, working with the state of Texas on how to communicate as they update their program, and certainly as we continue to update ours. The last thing I note is we do have a weekly sync. So they DIR did promulgate a rule back in, I think it was September of 2021, recognizing StateRAMP and giving automatic reciprocity for products who have a StateRAMP authorization to be recognized by StateRAMP or TaxRAMP. So every week on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, we have a sync with TaxRAMP and their system, so that if you're StateRAMP Ready or Authorized, you will automatically appear on the TaxRAMP page, their internal page. Jordan, did I miss anything?
I think you nailed it.
All right, more details to come. Attend that webinar. But hopefully I answered. I was trying to answer a few questions kind of that were posted in the chat. And if you have other questions, please reach out. We're going to invite you to reach out to either Jordan's team or mine, and we will do our best to help you through that process. SOC 2. This is another commonly asked question, and we're gonna punt this one to you, Noah. So the question of how does a StateRAMP audit compare to SOC 2, which many are familiar with?
Yeah, so there's actually, this is an excerpt from the Center for Digital Government Guide. There's a study done on SOC 2 versus StateRAMP or FedRAMP audits. It's a lot of information, but it kind of down to its core, for SOC 2, really, it's focused around, it's an older audit. It's a process by which, providers are able to assess their systems, and, it was really relevant prior to StateRAMP and FedRAMP. There was really no centralized way to audit NIST controls or have an authoritative source for the requirements or the parameters for NIST controls. So the SOC 2 audit, it meets a subset of the NIST controls. We have some more information on that on the next slide, but the takeaway from it is that if you've done a SOC 2, it gets you on the path with Snapshot to moving forward. Like Like right here, it shows if you've done a SOC 2, it shows the percentage of controls that you're meeting in the StateRAMP program by percentage. So if you have completed a SOC 2 and you're going for a moderate impact StateRAMP audit, you already have 13% of the controls completed. So again, it allows you, it gives you an entry point into the program. We actually have it as part of our snapshot criteria. Usually we request the SOC 2 report from the service providers coming through Progressing Snapshot because it allows us to see what things they've completed, where they're at, how things are moving forward. It's also a really good benchmark for providers that they've been through an audit and they understand what that looks like. So it gets you on the path, it helps you down the process, but for states, this just kind of helps show that the scope and coverage of the StateRAMP audit and the controls that we're assessing in relation to parameters, really helping drive security to the forefront for these products.
Absolutely. We did want to take a moment to share with you a couple of updates that we have. Jordan, I'll let you talk about small business resources, and then Noah, over to you again.
Yes, thank you, Leah. And as we've witnessed more smaller organizations joining and embarking on the StateRAMP journey, we've curated a small business resources page, which is available at stateramp.org/providers/small-business. This landing page will provide resources and really caters to the small business providers in ways to make the process more digestible and achievable. And this page will be updated regularly as we continue to develop the program. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to the site and then also reach out to our team for more information on that.
And one of the big pain points we've heard from any RAMP program is requirements related to leveraging third-party tools that must be, in our case, StateRAMP authorized in order to become fully StateRAMP authorized yourself. So we have some really what I think wonderful updates coming in the next couple of weeks related to a provisional status with boundary authorization updates. So for those providers who are leveraging non-StateRAMP or FedRAMP authorized tools, a process by which you can move to a provisional status and still showcase the security of your product while those other third-party providers are working towards a full StateRAMP authorization. And then additionally, we will have our updates to the NIST 853 Rev 5 baselines coming soon. Those will be going before the committee this month. And we will have follow-on information coming out on timelines to implement those new baseline control requirements.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? Next steps, we're going to invite you to join the mission if you have not already. So Jordan, you can maybe talk about how and what to do.
Yeah, so we encourage everyone to join us in our mission, and all of that starts by becoming a member. Again, you can do so by visiting stateramp.org/register, and this will allow you or an individual within your organization to be nominated as either a member and or advisor for some of our committees, including the Steering Committee, Appeals Committee, Standards and Technical, and of course, our most recently established Provider Leadership Council. And we welcome all feedback and insight as the program continues to grow. So becoming a member is a great way to allow your voice to be heard and provide insight to the overall program. And you'll also have access to education and resources, and most importantly, partner with an organization that is set out to improve our nation's security. So at all times, you could reach out to info@stateramp.org or reach out to me specifically at jordan@stateramp.org, and we'll be more than happy to accommodate.
Awesome. Well, we have reached the conclusion of our presentation. If anyone has additional questions, please type those in. If you had something that we didn't answer, maybe completely for you, when you do type in your question, please let us know your name and contact information so we can follow up accordingly. These are some helpful links and resources that we have on the website. So invite you to take a tour of that website if you haven't already, and reach out anytime. info@stateramp.org, and we look forward to serving you. Thank you so much for your time.